want to thank everybody for following up and all of the various things that have fallen away this semester, like the grammar exam and the weekly assignments, the makeup assignments, things along those lines. Everybody has been doing an excellent job. And I'm looking at everybody right now, and I think I'm in contact with everybody. I got a couple of emails, you know who you are, that you just have to respond to get the conferences in. And that's going to be the last major piece of business before we move on to finishing the semester. Good stuff, right? I know this week is particularly busy for a lot of transportation majors, so I'm going to make this class short and sweet. We will take the whole time, but we're going to jam pack it because there's a lot of information, and I have a strategy to kind of simplify things just a little bit. So here's what we're going to do. After Thanksgiving, the week of December 1st to 3rd, around the 3rd, I'm going to post the final. And you're going to give yourself honor system 3 hours, which is what you would get if you had to take the GWE sitting down with a piece of paper and writing it out. So it's going to be faster because you're typing it anyway. The 3 hours is for actually like physically writing it. I think they might have switched to computer centers pretty soon anyway. But it's going to be honor system. Just give yourself 3 hours, turn the thing in. So on December 3rd, I will post it up there. Actually in the finals week, I just have under week 15, which is what that is. I just have look to next week, prepare for next week or whatever, but I'll just have it all there. On week 16, you're going to have, I'll show you, you know what? Why am I wasting time? Let's share a screen. I'll just show you. Why should I describe buttons when I can show you buttons? Here's a screen share, and here's what we're going to do. Week 15 is the only thing that's on week 15 is plan ahead. So if we look on our contents page and we go down to our resources, you will notice that week 16 is simply portfolios, final timed exam due December 8th at noon. So by December 3rd, I will have the drop boxes here. I don't want you to submit anything before Thanksgiving. So I'm not even putting it up there. It's not visible for anybody yet. But to submit the portfolios, all you're going to do is take your revised documents in your little folder on your desktop or wherever you have them all together and just drop in essays 1 through 9, just drop them in there. And then I'll be able to have the rough draft that's in the previous Dropbox from weeks ago. And I'll be able to look at that. And then I'll be able to see the new collection of your finished portfolio ones all together. Nice and simple. So don't worry about which one goes where. They all go the same place. I'll be able to look at them in order. Just submit them number 1, 2, 3, all the way through 9. Even if I told you, and I've only told maybe 2 people this, but maybe even if I said, don't change a word, it's perfect. I don't think I told anybody that. But even if there are no changes and you really just submit it again, because that's the proper place. I'm not going to give anybody credit for submitting a draft weeks ago and then not submitting it for the final. And then remember, 80 out of 100 points for each of those essays is going to be given to you on the final submission. So good job with the rough drafts, but the points, this is a semester portfolio class, essentially. So most of the points that you're going to receive overall are going to be for that portfolio submission. So don't miss that. 10% of your grade is going to be for this final exam that you will give yourself 3 hours to do and then turn in. And we're going to go over that for the rest of the hour. And the remaining percentage that for all you math majors out there, you know how many percent that is. That's the other stuff that we did. The grammar worksheets, the grammar exam, the class participation, all that other kind of stuff. So it's going to be about those will roughly add up to, I realize I explained that very, very poorly. What I mean is 70% of total grade is going to be your portfolio. And you have, of that 70% of your total grade, you have only so far received 20% of that total for credit for the rough draft. To get all the rest of those points up to the 70% of your total grade, that's what the final portfolio is worth. So I think that makes more sense in a mathematically perfect world. Let's do this. I'm going to get out of the screen share here. Let's see everybody's face again. And do you have any questions for me before we get to the final project? Anything general? Okay, I'm going to throw this out there as well. I'm very available after I finish these conferences, the initial round of conferences after Friday. Very, very available, actually. I was totally lying before. I was just kidding. Shoot me an email. Let's go over some essays. If you need a second conference, just consider it an office hour or whatever. It doesn't have to be super formal. Even if you only have to want to do a face-to-face couple of things, I can answer a quick email. And I will finally, now that I'm up there, I'm caught up on my emails. I'm caught up on everything. And you can ask me follow-up questions on the revisions as they come up. Even if we've already talked about the paper, we can talk about it again. It's no problem. Shoot me an email. We'll set up a time. We'll do it. Okay? All right. Who's ready to discuss this pesky final? All right. Here we go. Now, if we go to this week's content page, right there, week 13. We take a look over here. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this for a while just so we can see everything properly. At the top, I just added this. This is week 13, and I just added this stuff so that it would not confuse anything that was around. Today, the narrative assignment is due, and we'll get to that later. I'll put some comments on it. You can revise it. But that's the actually last thing that was on my agenda that I'm not looking at my agenda, but now that I'm thinking about it, please feel free to experiment in the number 9 narrative essay. We have honed our skills of storytelling a little bit by using that descriptive language from essay number 1. You can do another and more versions of that added to the story that you're going to add. So I mean, put us there, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, movement, in the story itself for narrative essay number 9. And since we haven't gone over a lot of narrative structure, feel free to experiment with structure. Just make sure that something happens. That's the definition of a story. Something has to change from beginning to end. That's it. That's the definition of a story. Some people can do that in a couple of lines. Some people can do it in 1 page very effectively. Some people take, Tolstoy takes 1,000 pages to do it. His shorter novels, not so good. So with the narrative essay, this should be a feel free to experiment approach. So that said, let's take a look at time writing sample A. So I'd like everybody right now, I'm going to start a timer for 13 minutes. I'm going to go 13 because it's right in between where I decided to read this essay here as kind of quickly and then really, really kind of in depth. I want everybody to take a first pass and read every word of it. Don't skim it, just read it all the way through. And I'm talking about just the content here. So this is what we're looking for. Your directions for this timed writing sample are adequate organization, fullness of response, only being taught, basically means stay on topic and answer the question asked. Remember, there were a lot of people I might have talked to about essay number 6 where they decided to make up their own prompt because it seemed like that was a good idea, when in fact the prompt was stick to the same topic as essay number 5 for our exploration. Remember, answer exactly the prompt that was asked and consider your audience. Who's your audience? These people grading it, they're all going to be basically either grad school students or professors. So you have an educated audience and you're not going to be able to get away with basically any kind of summary, just ignoring of the issues or anything like that. They're going to know about this kind of stuff. Please develop your content and make sure you have enough time, even if it's only 10 minutes, 5 minutes, to do what you can to check for grammatical errors. So you're going to just open this up as a Microsoft Word document, and you're going to be able to annotate it however you want and then submit the whole thing. You can even submit the same document. You can just add in some spaces at the end. But generally, now that we've been writing these essays of 500 to 700 words, you kind of know what these are, 700 words. So here's what I'd like everybody to do. Minimize or just kind of shrink this shared screen down to let's see here, shrink it down so that you can open up a Brightspace window and go to this class. I'll give everybody a chance to get on top of that. But open up Brightspace Go to week number 13 and do this, please. Download the file, timed writing sample A. So if you're following along, this is week 13 content page in a separate browser window. Open it up so that you have the actual document, not just my screen share on your computer. Download timed writing sample A. And can I get a thumbs up when everybody's gotten that far? Excellent. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my camera off. Feel free to turn your camera off for 13 minutes. I'm going to start the timer right now for 13 minutes. And please read the whole way through. And what I'd like you to do in addition to that is, since it's a downloadable document, what you would normally do is like take some sort of note or circle something or whatever if it were on paper. Go ahead and use the highlighting function in Microsoft Word or the star, like whatever you want to do. But I would suggest this as a general strategy. The first time that you hear or see an author's name, highlight it, because there's a couple of different people we're talking about there. If there's a huge idea, I'll give you a hint. This is a little bit of a cheat, but this is a hard one because this essay is harder than the one that you're going to get. When Rwanda comes up, you're probably going to want to like highlight Rwanda, because that example, when you want to look for it later, you're going to be like, God, was that the same paragraph as Luxembourg or was it the other one? Like things are going to get confusing. So you want to just make signpost markers that don't take any time to write. You're not going to analyze. You're not going to summarize. You're not going to do any of that stuff. Make a signpost marker, Rwanda. Make a signpost marker, Dr. So-and-so says, because you're going to have to weigh these things next to each other. But just the quickest way to do it is to just highlight it and put it in yellow on the in the formatting on Microsoft Word, so that by the end of that first read through, you've thoroughly read it and you have at least one marker per paragraph, maybe only one, just to let you know what's in that paragraph so you can kind of gaze over it. It's 10 paragraphs long. Are we ready? 13 minutes, please start.
Wait, are we doing the 700 words or just annotating?
No, read it in 13 minutes. It's a 10 paragraph essay, time's a wasting. Read the thing. I'll see you in 13 minutes. Okay, that was 13 minutes. And if everybody wants to join me, was that enough time to get to know this material as well as you think you could possibly understand it? Because I mean, around 9 minutes in, I started getting a couple of thumbs up as in like, yeah, I'm good, right? So 13 minutes should have been plenty, right? Now remember, you have 3 hours to dissect and write the essay for this information. So the difference between skimming this material and reading this material is completely insignificant. Read it. Don't skim it. Because skimming it, if you miss something important, you are going to pay for it many times over later on if you make a mistake or leave out a piece of essential information that you otherwise would have caught if you read it carefully. So that's just a good pace making this. So I mean, this could have been, you could have spent 15 minutes on it, 16 minutes on it. That's still time well spent. But the essay material, this is very, very different than those SAT questions that you might have remembered from a few years ago, where you have to read the question, you have to read the essay passage quickly, because you also have to spend lots and lots of time on reading the questions and sorting through all the wrong answers and things along those lines, and you only have a certain amount of time to finish the whole section. So this is not like that. Basically, that's good time well spent. So now we've accomplished one of, I would say, 5 goals that you need to accomplish, right? You need to read the text. Second thing you need to do is decide which one of the 3 questions that you're going to answer. The third thing you're going to do is write an outline. The fourth thing you're going to do is write the actual essay. That should be the bulk of the time. And then if you have any time left over, revise some sentences. Look for a misplaced comma or a word order that you got backwards by accident because you were thinking while you were typing. So if we wanted to simplify that process, I think the most useful thing to take into account is you need to plan your essay and then you need to execute your essay. And if you can think about any time constraint project under those 2 broad categories, you're in the right space to make rapid progress. You plan it, you execute it. So all we need is a timer and basically a decision as to, all right, whatever I'm done, at some point, I need to make a hard cutoff for when I'm going to start executing, because you could plan forever, right? And a lot of people know this, especially from the private conferences. I've had a lot of discussions about, I don't know, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. How long have you been thinking about? 3 weeks? Dude, just get on with it. It's time to just take your best idea after 3 weeks and just go. If you got started on an essay, but you can't quite finish it. This is why novelists jump off bridges. It's a problem, right? So what you can do is, with this kind of level, you need about 15 minutes to read the thing. Think about how long it might take you to execute that next part of the plan. Choose your essay. There's going to be 3 questions. You can only answer 1. Write a big essay about it, and write your outline. Organize this information. What is the longest time that you guys would give yourselves to make the transition from planning to actually doing the writing, execution? Please go ahead and list that right here in the chat room. I got the chat open. We can all see each other's chat. Just say how long. You got 3 hours total. Okay, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 30, 15, 30, 30, 30, 45, 20, 30, 30. Good, good. I think everybody is, yep, I'd go to 45. I would definitely go to 45. And I would say, when I did this over again and I kind of thought about it a lot, if you're concentrating on making your outline really detailed, think about it this way. If you were going to take 45 minutes, maybe even 50 minutes, there's got to be a hard cutoff of, I got to start writing it now. That's not. So think of that as there's goals and then there's hard cutoffs, right? So 20 or 30 minutes might be a goal. 45 minutes might be your cutoff, though. You just got to go for it, because you're never going to finish it. Because you would hate to have an essay just incomplete and just trailed off. That would not be good at the end of 3 hours.
Does this include the reading of the paper too?
Yep. Yeah, this includes, you have no idea what's going on. They start the timer at 3 hours and they slap a piece of paper in front of your face. Okay, begin. That's it. So then that's everything. I took a 5-minute break to go to the bathroom. That's 3 hours for absolutely everything. They're just going to take your stuff away. So that's the old proctored exam. We're just going to mimic this in a kind of a honors system. Download the Word document, start the timer, and then go. So I'd say if anybody is planning up to an hour, then it's just, okay, it's go time. Now you're in problem zone. Now you're not going to finish. But 45 minutes, I think, would be a good kind of general benchmark. And I would think that that's a good general benchmark for any project, including woodworking. You could plan how to make a table and measure and decide which kind of stuff over there, but at a certain point you got to start. Now you want to not plan, because halfway through you're going to realize you need to make dovetail joints after you've already started putting a bunch of nails in there. So that's not going to work, right? So measure twice, cut once, as they say in carpentry. I just built my first carpentry project. Oh, we're in a room. You want to see it? Check this out. Not too shabby. If you see it really close up, you'll notice how completely off all the measurements are. But, you know, I just got some oak boards, did the whole thing, learned how to glue together the boards and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's all messed up and stuff like that. But at a certain point, I just said, I wanted a table of a certain measurements because I wanted to sit on the floor and kind of like sit cross-legged and stuff like that and just do it. So any project, time restraint, 3 hours, less than 1/3 of it, but somewhere between 1/8 and 1/3, plan, 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 plan. Make your plan good, make your plan detailed. Think through the problem. Start executing after that. Don't just run into it. Don't just start. So let's go to, we're moving right along in time. I'm going to go to the screen share and I'm going to take a look at this thing. And let's decide which question we're going to answer. So please, as I'm moving into screen share here, you can move in, if you're keeping a separate window open there with a Microsoft Word document, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to download this document and just open it up here. And hopefully it won't. There we go. This is all pretty good. So we got this big old, I put these numbers here, which is what you should do. I just did them for you. And then here's a little example of what I would say is a note or a signpost type of argument. That was me. That I just put that in there because I'm like Luxembourg, Rwanda, equality. That's what we're doing there, just as an idea. All right, first one. What, according to the authors, was wrong with Stoic and Geary's claims and conclusions? How did the authors prove the study to be problematic? Do you agree, disagree with the authors? So you're going to read 3 questions. You're either going to say it's a maybe or it's a no. Is that a maybe? Can we, what do you all think? Seems reasonable. Yeah?
That's a maybe.
That's definitely a maybe. I mean, right off the bat, I'm just thinking that's just the straightforward general essay prompt. Discuss the argument, agree or disagree. Pretty good. Anybody get to number 2? Have you seen this one yet? This one's fun. Comments posted in response to articles are often interesting places to see examples of critical reading and evaluation, especially in certain publications like the New York Times. Some commenters were critical of Dr. Savin Williams because of the way in which, at least as represented here, he seemed to confuse issues of gender identity and sexual orientation or identity. Why might they make such a claim? Why is keeping complex categories like these distinct especially important when constructing arguments around personal pronoun? Let me ask you one question. Who's Dr. Savin Williams? You are correct. It was not.
No idea.
No idea. I looked through it. So like I went through, I dug the links. This actually came to me in hyperlink fashion. So a lot of these things were hyperlinked. And so I read the Stoic and Geary report. I just wanted to really kind of get to the bottom of this one because this was given to me as a strong example from another professor. And that's not mentioned, which means these are excerpts from a larger textbook and that was a shoddily put together question because it's trying to have you imagine an article and respond to it that you haven't read. None of this matters. None of this matters, right? Because you know right off the bat, this is a maybe and this is a no thank you. No thank you. It's confusing. It's there are several different questions, but they're all kind of phrased in a similar way of why might they make such a claim? I don't know. I can tell you whether it's good or not, but I can't tell you. I mean, that's hearsay. I mean, I almost went to law school for a minute. That's not going to hold up in court. Why might they say? Speculation. Denied. Move on to number 3. Look at this. What do you think? No way. Not a chance. Here's what's coming on here. I'm going to tell you the short version of numbers 2 and 3. This is not going to be true on your final, but it is true for this one. If you are an expert in the hymns and hers, the gender-specific traditions, and the talking about male and female equipment, that means that you've done the reading on, and you are very, very well versed in the academic argument around gender fluidity. Now, this has nothing to do with whether you're gay or straight. It has to do with you've done the reading in this particular academic field, and you're comfortable using the language and not making any major mistakes about a field that you don't know anything about. So I'm not going to do this because I was actually a poetry major and I studied on creative writing. I concentrated on creative writing. And since then, I've taken up a couple of social issues that I know really well for papers. This is probably one of the least familiar that I'm with. So even at my age, with all this hair loss and the whole thing, I don't think I know enough about this to be able to effectively say that I can contribute to this conversation with my own personal knowledge. Now, let me ask you a question. If this was about climate change, how many of you would feel, I know some stuff? Exactly. It is just as likely that they're going to give you a climate change question as they would about a gender studies question. So you just don't know.
Why would they ask a question like this that 95% of people cannot answer?
Well, this is a unique school.
This
is a unique school because we don't take as many classes at this school in the humanities as many other universities do, like, because this is like supposed to be like throughout the Cal State system that this question is kind of geared toward. So it's any general undergrad, and they have more requirements, I think, to get their bachelor's degree, that they have to take some social issues classes. Now, here's the thing. You can't be up on all the social issues, right? Which is why you don't need to be that up on it on here. It may not be your strong point, but they got to rotate the issues. It's going to be climate change. It's going to be gender equality. It's going to be racial equality. It's going to be other hot topics that are currently discussed in academia. So it's going to be international studies. It's going to be questions of colonialism. You know, what country took over what one, and Britain ruling the world. Does Britain have any obligation to the countries they used to own, being nice to them? Do we? Do you know what our relationship is with Haiti? It's disastrous. Does France have anything that they really need to kind of like come to terms with Haiti as far as their foreign policy is concerned? I think they might. They might have a little something to do with that whole Haitian situation there. So when they get an earthquake, maybe France should kick down a little extra cash, help them out. Like it, right? So you can't be up on all these things. If it's your forte, like climate change, some of you guys are engineering majors and you know climate change better than I do. With your statistics, you know the Kyoto protocols, you know all these kind of different things about it. You could dive into that and kill it. But if you don't, guess what? There's gonna be one of these. Do it. Okay, that is actually farther and a little bit more in depth than I wanted to go in just the question solving. But this is what I'm saying, in a controlled environment where you have 3 hours, you're under a deadline. Easy is best. Predictable is best. Simple, straightforward, clarity is what you're going for. These things are complicated enough as they are. So you don't want to make any mistakes by just kind of like starting to make assertions about something that you haven't done a whole lot of reading in. But this one, there's always going to be one of these options. So do it. So I'm going to choose this one, and it just really is up to you whether any of these other things are problematic enough so that you think that you want to show that you're a black belt level expert at this particular thing, because then you have a chance of hitting it out of the park. But concise, clear, and pretty good will get you the high scores. It'll get you an A. It can do that absolutely under a timed environment. But flat out mistakes, saying things that are backwards or complete or untrue, like you've never done any reading on the subject, that will never get you an A on one of these timed writings. So let's do this now. I want everybody in our screen share here. I'm going to go back to take off the screen share, and I'm going to have everybody say, all right, this is what I want to do. If you had to make, let's say, 4 main idea body paragraphs, let's just say 3. Let's just say 3. 3 of them. Take a little time right here on the back of some paper and write down your 3 main big ideas. And here's what I want you to do. Put the paragraph number 1 through 10 of where the evidence is that you're going to use for that idea. So explain to me some sort of idea that has to do with answering this question number one. According to the authors, what went wrong with Stoic and Geary's claims and conclusions? How did the authors prove the study to be problematic? Do you agree or disagree with the authors? Give me three main ideas and then let's make a correlation between where do I have some evidence in here? So you all have a Word document that's open up that's separate so you can kind of go up and down. You don't have to rely on my screen share, right? Find, just put a number 7 and number 8. Where is that thing? Number 5. Just give it a shot. And I will now mute my microphone for just a couple minutes. Give you a minute. Try to come up with 3. Excellent. Just reading some of the comments. Thank you. My first woodworking attempt is, it's okay. It's all right. It's oak. It weighs 1,000 pounds. And I did spend more in oak boards from the lumberyard than it would have been to just buy a table from IKEA, even their best one or whatever. But it was like, that was a good month pastime well spent. All right, everybody got one? Good. Let's chime in. I see Brian has already started. Let's take a look at the chat box and please type in your idea. Pick one out of your 3 that you came up with and say, like, let's just pretend that this is going to be one of those body paragraphs. And give me paragraph number where you're going to find some evidence for it. And maybe 2 more words of what that evidence is. You know, for example, Rwanda or Jordan Peterson example, right? Paragraph 2, Jordan Peterson, whatever. But what is your idea? Where can we find it? Maybe 1 or 2 more words in there. And let me see a list of them. So just pick one and let's get a running list in the chat box off to the side. Open up that chat readability window. You might have to expand it yourself. It might not come up automatically. But we got about 2 or 3. We got 3. And so Marshall's question, that's a good one. Is this one of those things that when we pass the exam, if we find a problem with it?
I was kidding about that.
Oh, no, that's very, no. But what I want to say is that it's 50-50 as to whether, if you want to disagree with the statement and you have evidence within that context to do it, you can definitely do that. It's probably, and that's the thing is, don't know which one is easier. You just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. But you can definitely disagree with the author as long as you provide the evidence and you show why that evidence is dodgy. I mean, this article itself is saying, the whole point of this article is, hey, this other published article that's super famous is a piece of garbage. That's basically the main idea of this essay. So it's a very, very, it's a very, very common thing, basically. You can go either way. Misrepresentation of data, paragraph 4. Measurements of gender equality, Poland. Outside factors, Rwanda. Great. So you could probably, let's keep everybody typing. And let me, I'll shut up for a minute while people type. Give me one idea. I want everybody to contribute one idea, even if it's been mentioned before. Give me your version of it. So type, type like the wind. Okay, everybody else, we spent enough time doing all that stuff. It's kind of coming in. I got about half the responses that I wanted, so we're going to move on. Go ahead and please continue to post if you're still typing or anything along those lines. But yep, you're absolutely right. So the GGGI index not being designed for this kind of analysis, and some of these examples where there be Poland or the Rwandan genocide affecting women's involvement in STEM, that's very illustrative of a flawed methodology. And I went and read this article by that they refer to in the Atlantic Monthly. And the Atlantic Monthly is a very good magazine, and I do read it from time to time. And I was pretty shocked to kind of find that this is a bunch of nonsense, that was not vetted thoroughly enough, so that people were just saying, well, a study said it. Well, I mean, have you watched a TED Talk lately? Apparently blueberries and chocolate are going to make you to live, you're going to live to be 400 years old. I mean, there's always a study that's not peer reviewed, or there's only one study, but the results haven't been replicated yet, that says something. And until you kind of go in and dig apart the argument, they can be very, very misleading, or they could just be circumstantial. These correlations, it's that second paragraph, I think. Let me go in here and show you what I'm talking about. That second paragraph. There we go. Third paragraph. I came up with 43.63%. They have, or I came up with number, let's see, group of scientists, Harvard, replicate them. Numbers didn't add up. And here's numbers that I ran myself. So why is Poland 20th over here? And let's see. Here, where is that quote? It's in number 4.
It says they're fifth in the third paragraph.
Yeah. Yep. And they came up with different, like the point is that Stowett and Geary's findings are different than the findings we came up with, who are, sorry, Reichs and Richardson. And this is it. This is kind of the thing, is when you ask the authors about that, they said, oh, well, that's not what we really meant. What we really meant was we have our own basis for getting these numbers. And what is that basis? It's our secret. That's what they said in here. So this violates every rule of peer-reviewed scientific studies, that you don't show how you came up with the numbers. And when other people try to replicate that experiment based on your data, they cannot come up with anything even remotely like what you came up with. That's the whole point of these papers. So this is basically, for some reason, something that got past the editors is having its way all the way into mainstream discussions and being quoted as evidence that women don't like STEM. It's not they're not good at it. They just don't like it, according to Jordan Peterson. So that's enough in-depth stuff over here, right? We're getting into the meat of things. You're discovering what you want to say. I would say that this is a very strong, well-argued argument. And it seems like now that I did the research, I actually looked this guy up, and it is just gobbledygook and kind of nonsense, but maybe it passes for this psychological science. Lots of this thing is what I kind of looked up. You can kind of look that up. Check this out. Lots of stuff in here. These are all the corrections that the authors have made. So it's not great. We're not talking very good stuff here. So if you were to take your little 3-idea outline, and let's say maybe since it's 700 words or so, you need like 4 or whatever, I would suggest this at this point. The the best way to do this is once you reach your 30 minutes, your 45 minutes, whatever you've decided, and you start writing the body essays, or body paragraphs of your essay. And if you have your thesis at the top, try to make that thesis, write your paragraphs in the body with that thesis right up there at top. And then after you write them, you might have to revise your thesis a little bit, but then it'll be easy to stack a 1 or 2 sentence, 3 sentence introduction and a 1, 2, 3 sentence conclusion at the end that really fits what you have written. It's very difficult to write the introduction and the conclusion before you write the body of the essay. I would get the bulk of the body straight and then make the other parts fit. But you're going to need all the things that they told you as a freshman in high school that you need for a 5-paragraph essay. You're going to need an intro. You're going to need at least 3 main ideas for 3 body paragraphs, and you're going to need a conclusion. And you can shorten or lengthen those categories to be more or less than 5 paragraphs. But essentially, you're always going to have an intro with a thesis statement at the end. And that can be as little as 2 sentences if it's a real-time writing that's really under restraint, that you don't only have 1 hour to do. You don't have 3 hours to do. 1 sentence introduction, general, get us all involved, get us prepared, and to hear your 1 sentence thesis statement. And then get into your body. And then at the conclusion, after you've done all your arguing, relate it back to the bigger picture. What are we talking about? Why is this important? Any of those things are fine for your conclusion, opening it up to the wider discussion of importance. So in this case, you can have a nice boring thesis statement that states your claim and provides some words that are going to let us know what's in those body paragraphs to come. But avoid that super vague language like, I need a thesis statement, so I'm going to say the authors have some positive and some negative remarks to say about this article. Just don't do that. Don't do the positive, negative. Don't do the in many ways things. Get down to some language, 1 word, 2 words that's going to say data, misinterpretation. What's another word that we could use there that would point you towards a cherry picking data? Or another one was
incorrect metrics.
Yeah, man. Methodology, metrics, all that good stuff. Now you're talking. That's gonna be great. So we'll do that, and that's all I wanted to go over with this particular example to get you ready to hear, and hopefully, this is harder than the exam that I'm gonna give you, but I wanted to let you know what's humanly possible in this kind of situation, and basically get you out of your comfort zone a little bit to challenge you to come up with come up with a plan, come up with some ideas. Because if you look at this thing and just say, I don't know where to start, you've already lost the battle. You need to have a plan. The plan is 20 to 45 minutes of reading, choosing, outlining, and then make a hard switch to execution. Start with your body paragraphs and make sure that your thesis actually matches them. And then you can tack on, with a proper perspective, you have an intro and you have a conclusion. You can bookend it that way. So any problem that looks like I don't know where to begin begin it with those steps. Any questions right now? Perfect. We understand everything. Let me show you a little something. Here is a more thorough, right down there. Before you do your final, I want you to download that one and read it. It's the exact same thing we just went over, but I've explained these things rather than in lecture format and exercises. I've just given you my thoughts play by play. It's a little more thorough. It takes a little longer, but I didn't want to keep you here for 2 hours. I wanted to give you the as quick as possible version. So here's just another reference, basically, that you can review for this strategy and get these ideas fresh in your mind right before the final. Please do that right before the final. And now let's just take a little experiment. This is a super mini one that we'll do in about 10 minutes altogether. So everybody, please go ahead and download this guy right there, sample reading redlining. We're going to look at another social issue in a very short format that you guys can do. So let's just take a couple of minutes. I don't have to time it or whatever. We're going to do the whole thing pretty quickly. But please download it, open it up so that you can see the part of it that you need. But this is it. This is the whole thing. This is 3 small, short paragraphs and an essay question. And I've decided that I'm going to pick on Jordan Peterson because I spent way too much time trying to figure out why he's so famous. I don't know. But everybody, it's like Netflix documentary about this guy. Why? Because he's whining about that he doesn't like work. He doesn't like working in Canada. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. But anyway, we're going to pick on him. So please read. Give me a minute. There we go. It's all up there. So sorry. Thanks. Typo. Please go ahead and read the essay question as well. Jordan Peterson states, I was really tired when I did that. Okay. Are you with me? Ready? That was pretty quick, but I think we can kind of move on just to kind of get the general idea. What I'd like you to do is basically, I mean, you know, we have basically 3 paragraphs on this phenomenon of redlining, which is simply racial discrimination at an institutional level. Not just the institution is race that, you know, operates in a racist way. It's that it's that you have the uniformity here. Redlining is the racism of the people that work there, basically made something normal practice. Don't lend money to these poor neighborhoods. Just don't do it. And they didn't. And that's why we have a significant disparity in homeownership along racial lines today. It's because for many, 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 many decades, access was completely denied. Before, you know, there were 100,000 or something, hundreds of thousands of people got the GI Bill after World War II, and it totally transformed America. And I don't know what the exact number is. I forgot. It was 100,000. It was like 150,000. A lot of people went to college after they served in the military after World War II. And what that did was take people that would have otherwise had been working class people and turning them into professionals, turning them into college educated people. You know how many black people received the GI Bill? 100. 100 people. That's right. Altogether, not 100,000. Of the 100,000 that in the years following up before 1950, it was about 100 people. So we have a systematic, they just didn't do it. There wasn't any. So there's a disparity in the communities there, access to certain stuff that other people did get access to. So there's a great book on this one. I just kind of wanted to give this to you in, here it is. Hold on. Check this guy out. When Affirmative Action Was White. It's a great book. It's when basically redlining is an affirmative action program for white people. It's quotas in the exact opposite way that we've been thinking about them in the last couple of decades. So with that, meaning long-term institutional problems and access to, your schools are funded from local property taxes, right? So this all has to do with local properties. So how good are the schools? They're that good, however, how much of it they can afford. So with this, Jordan Peterson is discounting that affirmative action is this naive thing. So what I'm asking you to do here is not talk about redlining as opposed to affirmative action or whatever, but what does this inform your opinion of in relation to this? So how does the above essay, how does redlining inform your opinion of affirmative action? And how does Peterson's critique of affirmative action relate to historical discrimination? So any ideas? You want to put something in perspective? You want to use some things here? How would you organize an essay like this? Why don't we open it up to a discussion and just chime in there, turn your microphones on, and I want to try and get some thoughts going on how you would make an outline to tackle this one.
I would try to start like they started this one is it's helpful to define the terms.
Yep.
What is redlining? What is affirmative action? Because if the audience doesn't know that, they're not going to know the rest of your essay. So like how this one started is a good starting point of this is what redlining even is.
Great. So you're going to basically, it's a very interesting point that you bring up, and I think it's a very good one, that basically what you want to do is not necessarily define the terms because your reader may not know what they are, but what you want to do is define the terms so your reader knows that you know what they are. That's actually what you're proving, because remember, your reader is going to be the reader. You're never writing these for a general audience. You're writing them for the reader. So who's your audience is a very important thing to consider. And I think you hit a very, very, very good point right there, is they want to know that you have clear communication skills. And one way of doing that is if you define them, these terms, you're showing them that you know what you're talking about. They know what you're talking about because they're the readers and they got hired to do that sort of thing. But it's so like a little twist there. And I think it's exactly right. But think of it from that perspective. You need to establish this so that if they thought it was good, they would also hand it to a friend and say, hey, you should read this. And they would be able to understand it too. You need to be able to have that kind of universal access. So it's not just a general reader, but specific reader. Define your terms. Great. So there's this and there's that. Now, what do they have to do with each other? What do redlining and affirmative action have to do with each other?
I mean, someone else can talk, but by redlining, you are choosing someone else by default. That's just like a natural consequence of redlining.
Okay.
Someone else affirmative action.
Yep. Great. Very good job. So
that'd be like an intro paragraph. That's the like a thesis.
Yeah, exactly. Let's open it up. What's the difference between what Jordan Peterson thinks here and what our author or our person that is summarizing the Northwestern University's sociologist John McKnight? How are we looking at these things differently? What part of history, if I put it this way, this is kind of the same question in a different way. What part does history between the races play in Jordan Peterson's argument, opinion, statement?
I think he's saying that just because people are from the same race, like it doesn't mean that they have like the same background or same ideas. Yeah,
he's saying that history from these groups is irrelevant. People are people. They're the same in some ways, and they're just similar in other ways. So let's just forget about it. He's saying that basically race and the history of your race doesn't matter, doesn't inform who you are as a person in any perceivable or significant way. So this is part of a longer quote, and he actually says that same thing. He kind of says it out there. He says that, well, he uses the example of just, hey, well, there's black people and there's white people, but there's much more difference between a black person and another black person than there would be between just a general black person that you got and a white guy that you got. There's differences between individuals that are more similar than the differences between the groups, and therefore this doesn't matter.
In other words, he's ignoring the institutionalized redlining.
I would say if I was going to make this,
race?
yeah, I mean, we're just talking about ideas and basically approaches that you could make. You could definitely argue the opposite. However, I'm saying, like, when I look at this and I'm like, okay, I got to write an essay. How does redlining inform your opinion of affirmative action? That's the thing that is so amazing about this, is that people just say, well, affirmative action is based on race, so it's just wrong. And that's the end of their argument. I'm like, wait a minute. There's the history of the world. Let's bring that back into it. Let's bring back the history of the world. Where have we come from? Where are we today? How do we get in this mess? Is there a way out of it? Is the way out of it? So I can definitely see somebody arguing the opposite point, that the way out of this mess is different than the way into it. But let's not pretend it's not there. And I would write a whole essay about that, because that's just where I saw it going. But they're going to maybe ask you to extrapolate, infer, as they say. What would this author have to say in relation to this author? Why don't you juggle these two things? How can you infer? And I think the thing that I'm inferring from these two things is that we're talking about a fundamentally different concept of history, where history is extremely important. It's not racial identity that's important, and it's certainly not where it's history that's important. And where Jordan Peterson makes no mention of this. So you have to infer that the guy that's doing our writer who's summarizing the history of redlining, you have to infer that might have some impact on how we're going to deal with the racial discriminatory practices that we still face today, and the disparities in access to resources and education and housing that we have today that are now institutionalized. I think that's a fair, it's not a word. I wanted to say inversion, and I would really like to invent that word. That's a fair inversion. I could infer it, but now that's a fair concept to infer, I think. And that's probably what I want to get you thinking about, is you want to be expecting stuff like this, where you have to take somebody that's going into detail with one thing and figure out what's going on and infer what our author might get out of it. So if you had to make a guess, let's take our author from Northwestern, or that's summarizing John McKnight's piece. What does this person think, if you had to choose, about affirmative action? Why don't we do this? You guys want to do it in the chat window? Do it in the chat window. Everybody chime in there. A couple words at least. Give me something. What does our author of the redlining paragraphs that we just read, what can you infer that this author thinks about affirmative action? Make a gamble. 50-50. For it, against it. Take a side. Okay, we're on the same page. Now keep coming in. Against? Good. How do you support either the for or against position? Because I mean, yes, the obvious choice is, well, that seems like for it. But that's not necessarily the case. I think you are correct. But it's not so important that we get to the bottom of this issue today in the next 3 minutes, which is how much we have for class. What I want you to do is think about how you're going to put this together into a short outline of a couple of main ideas. Okay. And I think that's probably enough for today. So we cannot know for sure whether our author that we're discussing there is for or against affirmative action. But I can tell you this. Redlining is one of the arguments for affirmative action, as it should work. However, you could totally be for it. And of course, Jordan Peterson has been asked about this before, and he said, well, yeah, what about redlining? And he says, well, everybody knows that's wrong. Don't do that. What I'm saying is, what's the best way to fix it? Okay, Jordan Peterson, we're with you. Let's hear, how do you fix it? He says, base people on on. Essentially, that's the other way that you could conceivably argue the opposite case is if you wanted to argue against affirmative action, you would have to argue in some way, recognizing that we're at a certain place because of historical reasons. I'm not stating this very well. As we're going on to an hour and 15 minutes, I'm losing the power of speech. I think what I'm going to do right now is call an end of class, and I'm going to stay online to answer questions specifically. I want to do a little scheduling for anybody that's going to hang around right now. We're going to schedule our last conferences. And after Friday, I'll be done with the round of conferences, and I will be available for additional one-on-one meeting times pretty much anytime you want. Just give me an email and say, I'd like to chat with you about this essay or that essay, and give me a chance to get prepared and get your essay up and get familiar with it again before we have our meeting. But basically the first couple of days before Thanksgiving, upcoming week, I'm pretty flexible. After Thanksgiving, pretty flexible. Reach out, shoot me an email. Let's set up a time. Let's talk about it, and let's get your portfolio ready for submission in early December. So you can, after Thanksgiving, I'm going to open up these whole things. You can do the final after Thanksgiving, before like December 1, December 2. You can get that out of the way. You don't have to wait to the 8th. Portfolio as well. I'm going to open up basically December 3rd, I think is the date where I'm going to open all this stuff up. So you can submit all this stuff between December 3rd and December 8th. It'll all be up there. But the spaces are being held right now on the content page, so you won't get confused about any dates. It's all in there. Just check back, tune in later for more updates.